On my wedding day, my uncle sent a photo. Everyone, my parents, siblings, and cousins, on a yacht in Maui. My mom had texted hours earlier, "We won't make it. Don't take it personally." I didn't reply. That night, I revoked access to the emergency fund and prepared a big surprise. 1 week later, my dad was at my door screaming. Without thinking twice, I announced, "In my opinion, they betrayed me." Plain and simple. People like to dress it up with softer words: miscommunication, priorities, misunderstanding. But no, it was betrayal. It was my wedding day, the one day I genuinely wanted them there. I was adjusting my hair in the mirror when the photo came through. My phone buzzed once, and I picked it up without thinking. It was from my uncle. Just a picture, no message at first. Just everyone. My parents, both my brothers, my sisters, their husbands, wives, their kids, cousins, everyone on a yacht in Maui, smiling like they were celebrating something sacred. Someone had even edited it with a caption that looked handwritten. Peace, family, no distractions. I stared at it for a full minute before noticing a text from my mom had come in earlier. "We won't make it. Don't take it personally." That was all she wrote. No reason. No call. Not even an excuse. She didn't even pretend to feel bad about it. I didn't reply. They knew Martin and I were doing a small ceremony. They knew we hadn't invited anyone outside the family. They knew how much this meant, especially because it was just us, two people who never really felt like they belonged anywhere. Martin had grown up in foster care. He never met his real parents. Every time someone asked who would walk him down the aisle, he just smiled and said, "No one," not in a sad way, just honest. And me? I had a family. But they never really saw me, not for who I actually was. I was the quiet one, the one who kept things to herself, the one who paid for things silently, but never got a real seat at the table. My whole life, I tolerated the way they treated me, like I was some distant cousin who just happened to be around. But I still thought maybe this time they'd show up. Instead, they chartered a yacht on the same weekend. While I was pinning on my veil, they were toasting cocktails in the Pacific. I didn't tell Martin about the photo. He saw something was off, but he didn't ask. He just looped his arm through mine and said we should go. The ceremony was small, quiet, bare, if I'm being honest. A few people from work came, more out of obligation than closeness. There was no music, no laughter, just the sound of waves in the distance, and two people trying to make the best out of what was supposed to be the biggest day of their lives. That night, we sat on the balcony of our rented Airbnb. We could see the city lights, but it felt cold. Not because of the weather, but because I knew what had happened was final. Something had shifted. There was no coming back from this. Martin didn't say much until I closed my laptop after checking some emails. He looked at me and said, "If you let them treat you like this now, they'll never stop." That was it, one sentence. But it hit me harder than anything my family ever said. So I opened my laptop again. I revoked access to the family emergency fund, the one I created 5 years ago when my parents were drowning in debt and my siblings kept asking for just a little help. One by one, I pulled their names off. Every single one of them, gone. Martin didn't cheer or smile. He just sat beside me and let me work. But I didn't stop there. That night, I locked down every shared investment, every co-signed account, every asset I'd let them attach themselves to, back when I thought we were a unit. Everything we ever built together was now inaccessible to them, and I didn't say a word. 7 days passed. Then, without warning, my dad showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him look that furious since I was a teenager. He didn't ask anything, just started screaming, and I didn't hesitate. I looked him in the eye and said, "You're cut off, all of you. I'm done." He didn't even knock, just started banging on the door like he had every right to be there. I opened it without saying anything. And the first words out of his mouth were, "What the hell did you do?" No hello, no how are you, just anger. And behind it, panic. He was already red in the face, pacing on the front porch. I didn't answer. I stepped aside and let him in. But the second he saw Martin standing in the hallway, his whole energy shifted, like he suddenly remembered who he was really mad at. He pointed at Martin and said something disgusting. Not even subtle. Something about how Martin got in my head and turned me against my own blood. And the way he looked at him, like he was some stranger who snuck into our lives and broke us from the inside. I stepped between them. You're not going to talk to him like that, ever. He tried to laugh it off like I was just having a moment, like I'd cool down once he explained everything, about how the timing was bad, how they'd planned the trip months ago, how the wedding just came out of nowhere. It didn't. We sent invites 2 months earlier. No one responded. I told him I locked everything because I was done being treated like an outsider in my own family, that I wasn't going to bankroll people who couldn't show up for me when it actually mattered. His voice went up again, louder, more desperate, said I was being dramatic, that a wedding's just a day, and then he dropped the line I'd heard my whole life. You're still part of this family whether you like it or not. I looked him straight in the face and said, not anymore. That's when he turned to Martin again and said, he's dragging you down. He just wants your money. He doesn't care about your family. He wants to isolate you from us so you have no one but him. Martin didn't respond. He just stood there, but I did. I told him Martin's the first person who's ever made me feel like I wasn't just someone to tolerate, that he's never once asked me for money, never once used guilt to get anything from me, and never once made me feel like I had to earn love. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, get out. He didn't move at first, stood there like I'd hit him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care how he felt. I repeated myself, leave. He slammed the door on the way out so hard the frame shook. We stood in silence for a long time after that. I thought I might feel regret. That old part of me, the one that still wanted to believe there was something to save, waited for it, but it didn't come. The next day, my mom called, then my oldest brother, then my sisters. They took turns spinning the same story, that it was just a misstep, that I'd gone too far, that I was letting a single event destroy years of closeness. But there was never closeness. I didn't answer any of their calls. I didn't want to hear more lies disguised as concern. So I sent one message in the family group chat, a chat they usually only used when someone needed something from me. You chose a yacht over my wedding. Enjoy the ocean. No one responded. Not that day, not the next. But later that night, Martin and I sat on the couch, sharing leftovers and watching a show we barely paid attention to. And somewhere in the middle of it, I said something I didn't plan. Let's leave, just for a while. LA, maybe. He didn't ask why. He didn't hesitate. He just said, okay. And that was it. Something cracked open. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel free. We left in 4 days. No dramatic farewell. No cryptic posts or long texts. I just shut everything down. The house was put into full security lockdown. Cameras, remote access, full automation. I had a management company step in to handle the property, and I gave them one instruction: no visitors, ever. By the 5th day we were in Los Angeles, we rented a place in West Hollywood, $8,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment with a view that felt more like a hotel than a home. I paid the full year in advance, not because I had to, just because I could. Martin smiled when we walked in. He didn't say much, but I could see the tension in his shoulders melt. Maybe it was being far from all of it. Maybe it was finally having a space that felt like ours. Not mine, not his. Ours. He didn't ask questions when I started rerouting my business through new accounts. I kept the operations online. Most of it was already automated anyway, but I shifted everything to be fully independent from the family network. No shared servers, no joint ventures, no legacy systems. I severed every financial tie that connected me to them. I expected backlash, or maybe part of me wanted it, some final fight to make it clear where the line was. But what came instead was silence. 2 weeks passed. Then the calls started again. My oldest brother first. He was the one who used to call when someone needed money but didn't want to ask directly. He said he just wanted to talk. But the minute I answered, it turned into a guilt trip. He said our parents were struggling, that they'd returned from the trip to find everything locked. No access to funds, no emergency reserves. My dad couldn't even refill a prescription because the pharmacy flagged the card as frozen. I asked him why they thought it was okay to abandon me on the most important day of my life. He paused, then said, "It was just a wedding." I hung up. The next call was from my sister, the one who always said we were the closest, even though she never showed up unless she needed help moving or had another unpaid ticket. She tried a softer approach, said Mom was crying, that Dad hadn't slept, that everyone was saying I was being manipulated by a man with no roots. That's when Martin took the phone out of my hand and said, "We're not interested in being part of your games anymore. Click. 2 more days went by. Then came the message from my mom. You're letting him ruin everything. We're your family. He's just passing through. That one sat in my chest for a while. It didn't hurt the way it used to. Not because it didn't mean anything, but because it meant exactly what I'd feared. They never saw Martin as real. They never saw us as real. They thought he was temporary, and maybe worse. They thought I still needed their permission to build something without them. That night, I told Martin I wasn't going back. Not to them, not to that house, not to the version of me that thought I had to earn their respect with bank transfers and silence. He just nodded and said, "Good." It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it just was. We opened a bottle of wine and sat on the balcony watching the skyline glow. For the first time in years, no one was asking me for anything. No one was reminding me of what I owed. No one was pretending I mattered only when I was useful. It was quiet, and I wasn't lonely. I should have known the silence wouldn't last. It was about 5 weeks after we moved to LA. Things were finally settling. Martin had started sketching again, something he hadn't done in years. I was sleeping better, working better. There were even moments during the day where I didn't think about them at all. Then one night I got a call from an unknown number at 3:12 a.m. Normally I would have let it ring, but something made me answer. Maybe I was half awake and confused. Maybe it was instinct. Either way, I picked up. The voice was shaky. "Wendy, your house is gone. There was a fire. It's just gone." It was my old neighbor, Mark. We weren't close, but he had my number in case anything serious ever happened. I sat up, fully awake now. "What do you mean, gone?" He repeated it, said the house caught fire around 3 o'clock in the morning, and by the time the trucks arrived, it was already collapsing. He said it looked intentional. Fast. Too fast. "They're saying electrical, but I don't buy it." I hung up and opened the remote security app. All 6 camera feeds. Black. Dead. I pulled up the logs. The last recorded motion was at 2:47 a.m., then just a full drop to 0. Martin had woken up by then. He didn't ask. He just watched me work through it. I called the property manager next. Confirmed it. Full loss. The place was gone. But what he said next stuck with me. There were signs of forced entry. The front door was broken in. Windows on the second floor, too. They were doing a full investigation. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat there in silence, realizing what was gone. The house itself, sure. But also everything I didn't keep in digital form. The early contract books from when I first built my company. Paper copies of agreements with clients I no longer even worked with. Old hard drives. Personal backups of financial records. Scanned documents. Signatures. Things I never uploaded anywhere because I didn't trust the cloud with them. They were all burned. Everything. Gone. And the worst part, only one group of people knew what that house meant to me. Only one group would have even had a reason to want it gone. I didn't say it out loud, not even to Martin. But the very next morning, I started digging. I pulled up every transaction tied to the old trust account that had been frozen. I thought I'd closed every pathway, but one card had somehow slipped through. A shared expense card I'd forgotten existed. And guess who still had access? My youngest brother, Dean. He hadn't reached out, hadn't texted, hadn't called, not once. But 2 days before the fire, he used that card at a hardware store 10 miles from the house. He bought 3 red plastic gas cans. I stared at the receipt for a long time. It wasn't proof, not on its own, but it wasn't nothing. I didn't go to the police. I didn't want to walk in with a hunch and get brushed off. I needed more. I needed to know just how far they were willing to go. So I waited. And 5 days later, my mom called me again. I wasn't going to answer, but then I thought, no, let's see what she says. I picked up. She didn't waste time. She was already crying, said she missed me, that the family wasn't the same without me, that she wished things had been different. And then, almost like she was reading from a script, "We heard about the fire. Martin must be terrified. Thank God you weren't there when it happened. That could have been awful." I didn't say a word, just listened. Because I hadn't told anyone when it happened. I hadn't told anyone we weren't there. I hadn't even posted about the fire. There hadn't been a single article. No news coverage. No official reports made public. Not yet. But they knew. They knew we weren't in the house when it went up. Martin and I sat in silence that night on the balcony, just staring at the city. Neither of us needed to say it out loud. They did this. Maybe not all of them, but at least one, and the rest knew. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. And I wasn't just going to ignore it. Not this time. After the call, something inside me changed. Up until that moment, I'd been reacting, hurt, cutting ties, protecting what was mine. But now, it felt different. Something sharper settled in me. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even angry in the way I expected to be. I was focused. This wasn't just about the fire. It was about everything that came before it. The wedding, the years of being sidelined, the fake smiles, the conditional love, the way they always found a way to benefit from me without giving anything real in return. They never respected me, and now they were trying to erase me. They burned my house down, and they thought I'd just take it. I started compiling everything. I pulled data logs from the property, old texts, backup security footage from my neighbor's doorbell camera, anything that showed who was near my house the night of the fire. There it was, 2:41 a.m., a car I recognized. Dean's. You could barely make out the plates, but it was there, parked on the street, then gone by 2:53 a.m. Still not enough for police, but enough for leverage. Martin was watching me build the file and finally asked, "What are you going to do with all this?" "I'm going to make sure they never recover from it." He didn't ask for details, just nodded and said, "Then I'm with you." I contacted an attorney I knew, someone I'd done contract work with, the kind of guy who owed me a favor and didn't ask too many questions. I laid out everything I had, told him I wasn't ready to press charges yet, but I wanted to lock every asset, every joint account, every lingering tie I might have missed. Within 72 hours, it was done, legally frozen. Every last cent they still had access to, gone. Then came the real hit. I contacted two of the companies my family had relied on for funding. One of them was a mid-sized logistics company that my father technically owned, but that I financed during its startup years. The paperwork was fuzzy. No one ever expected me to read the fine print, but I did. Turns out the controlling interest had quietly reverted to me 2 years ago when my dad missed the contractual milestone. They never noticed. So I pulled out. Sold the controlling shares to an outside party. Overnight, they lost their biggest financial safety net. Within days, I started hearing about calls being made, people in the family calling each other, scrambling, blaming each other. Then one morning, while Martin and I were eating breakfast, the building's front desk buzzed up. "He's here again," the doorman said. "Same man as last time, your dad." I told them to send him away, but this time Martin stood up. He said, "No, let's end this face to face." I didn't know what he meant until we walked down together and opened the front door. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shirt was wrinkled. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. He started talking before we even stepped outside. "We were wrong. We made mistakes. But this, you're destroying everything. This is your family. We built all this together." I just looked at him and said, "You burned it." Martin didn't wait. He stepped forward. "You let your daughter's house burn down. And now you're here asking for what? Mercy? You didn't show up to her wedding, but you showed up now that your money's drying up." He snapped at Martin again, accused him of manipulation, of brainwashing me, of turning me against everyone, called him a parasite. So I did something I didn't plan. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit record. "Say that again," I said. "Say exactly what you just said about him." He backed off, suddenly realizing what I was doing. "You think this is just about money? You think you can insult the only person who's ever stood by me and expect me to come running because things are hard now? No. You burned that bridge the moment you all stepped on that boat in Maui." He didn't have a response, just stared at us, then turned and walked away. And as we stood there, I realized something I hadn't admitted until that moment. I didn't miss them, not even a little. I missed the version of me that still hoped they might change. The peace didn't come like a switch being flipped. It came in layers. First, it was the absence of noise. No more texts from my mom pretending like everything was fine. No more calls from my brothers dancing around money. No more forced family group chats filled with fake laughter and inside jokes I never felt a part of. Then it was space, room to think, to breathe. Martin and I started settling into our new life in LA. The apartment felt strange at first, like we were playing house in someone else's place, but that faded quickly. It became ours in little ways. A mug he picked up from a thrift store, the way the light hit the kitchen table in the mornings. A blanket I bought because he kept stealing mine. Work stabilized too. Once I pulled the last tangled roots of my family out of the business, it ran smoother than ever. Fewer hands in the pot, less drama, better focus. I built new partnerships, real ones, transparent, honest, no backdoors or hidden agendas. For the first time, I was building something entirely mine. Martin had started sketching again, filling notebooks like he couldn't get the ideas out fast enough. I'd catch him sitting by the window, hair up, pencil-smudged fingers, completely in his world. It made me weirdly emotional seeing him like that, free. One evening, we were walking through Runyon Canyon just before sunset. He had his arm looped through mine, and we were talking about everything and nothing. And then he said, "You know, if none of that had happened, the wedding, the fire, all of it, we'd still be there, wouldn't we? In that house, pretending everything was okay." He wasn't asking, just saying it out loud. And he was right. I might have kept waiting for them to change, kept giving them another chance, kept twisting myself into someone easier to accept. But after everything burned down, something solid started growing in its place. The following week, we got married again. Not legally. We'd already signed the papers. This was just for us. We rented a small rooftop in Silver Lake. 2 friends came. No photographers, no speeches. Just a handwritten vow and a kiss as the sun dipped behind the hills. There was no stress. No panic about seating charts or who wasn't showing up. No need to pretend. Afterward, we walked to a little taco stand and ate sitting on the curb in our wedding clothes, laughing at nothing. That night, when we got home, I opened my laptop one last time. The trust was still technically active. There was some residual money left, tucked away. I'd ignored it for a while, undecided. But that night, I knew what to do. I donated the rest of it, every cent, to a private scholarship fund for former foster kids trying to start businesses. No name attached. No credit asked, just gone. I closed the laptop and turned to Martin. He was lying on the couch with his head on a throw pillow, flipping through one of his sketchbooks. He looked up and said, "You look lighter." "I am," I told him, and I meant it. There was a version of me I'd carried for years, the one who wanted to belong, to be accepted, to not always feel like an outsider in her own life. That version was gone now, not bitter, just gone. In its place was this, a quiet life. A man who never once made me feel small, work that didn't leave me drained, mornings that started slow, nights that felt earned. No more proving myself, no more waiting for a family that never really wanted to show up, no more apology for living life my way. They may have thought they were punishing me when they abandoned me on my wedding day. Maybe they thought the fire would break me, that I'd come crawling back. But all they did was give me exactly what I needed, a reason to walk away for good. And now I'm free.